Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. We've got a really cool guy on the show today and an excellent guitar player and a gentleman who's very seasoned in Nashville. We're with Kerry Marx, who's recently become the musical director of the Grand Ole Opry, who succeeded Steve Gibson, who I interviewed, about 2-3 months ago. Kerry's a studio musician. Again, he's best known for his work with the Opry. He's been on the staff with them since 2000. Through the Opry, he's played with loads of cool people like Booker T and the MGs, Brad Paisley, David Crosby, G.E. Smith, James Burton, Keith Urban, Johnny Cash, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Those guys are cool. Vince Gill, James Taylor, and Steven Tyler. He was a guitarist for the CD Songs from the Neighborhood, which is the music of Mr. Rogers, which received a Grammy Award. Do you know Mr. Rogers is like really in now for some reason? I see him all over the place. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Fred Rogers.
Right. Well, it's the new movie.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. That's out. He's also played on the Many Moods of Moses with Beanie Man, who's a guy who plays Jamaican dancehall music. And that album also got a Grammy nomination. And for the 2-time multi-platinum self-titled album by the musical group Blackhawk. That is, who runs that? Don? Who runs Blackhawk? Who's the leader of that band?
Oh, that's Henry Paul.
Henry Paul from the Outlaws, right?
Yes, from the Outlaws. Yeah. And I think he's still touring the Outlaws. They're
touring right now.
Yeah, they've had Blackhawk is I guess probably done by attrition. So they've had deaths in that group, unfortunately.
Yeah,
right.
And you were also a member of the Johnny Cash Show Band. Kerry originally studied music at the University of South Carolina, and then he went on to concentrate on jazz guitar at North Texas State in Denton, Texas, which is a pretty famous music school. I've had a ton of guests who came out of there. He moved to Nashville in 1981. He's played a variety of jazz, pop, rock, and country music in the Nashville recording scene. In addition, he also toured with artists like Olivia Newton-John for 6 years, Johnny Mathis, Lynda Carter for 10 years, Don McLean for 17 years. Oh, Prentice was on that thing with you probably, right?
I never did it with him. No, I sort of had this period where I wasn't I played with him off and on for a few years, and then there was like a dark period where I didn't do it. And Mark was in that period, and now I've gone back and done some recently since Mark left. Okay. So Mark got lucky.
Steve Wariner, 06, 07, I interviewed Steve, great guy. Porter Wagner, Leanne Womack, Johnny Cash, Toby Keith and Shania Twain, Ronnie Milsap, Razzie Bailey, Jerry Reed, and Ray Price. Man, what a diversity there, man. Tremendous.
Yeah, thanks. Well, seasoned, you said I'm a seasoned musician. That just means old.
Yeah, that was
I'm an old musician.
Can I say that? We're here with Kerry Marx, an old musician.
Yes, yeah. And it's taking a lot of time to do all this stuff.
Yeah, man, that's awesome stuff, though.
Thank you.
Kerry's also performed and composed for major networks, most notably for the Lionel Richie special, Hannah Montana, the American Music Awards for 12 years, the Academy of Country Music Awards for 15 years, CMA Christmas for 5 years, the CMA Awards, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, as well as the Grammy Awards. Man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Craig. Thank you.
So, thanks, man. For starters, I just mentioned you have such a ton of diversity, like when you go from the Opry to Beanie Man to Johnny Cash, Don McLean, Lynda Carter, Lionel Richie. That's a ton of diversity, and I had some questions about that. The first one was, what do you like most about that?
Well, it's never boring. I can't get in a rut doing that. So I think it's just that there's always some challenge that I have to try to meet.
How do you stay in shape, for so many different genres, or is the diversity of this, in a sense, all the practice you need in and of itself?
Well, having done different things for so many years, now it just sort of comes down to taking each thing as it comes and then working on that and getting that as, down as well as I can, and then moving on. And then the next thing will be different. And then I work on that. And I guess that's always been the way it's been. And I concentrate on that until I get that done. And then I move on to the next thing, and it just goes on and on. So at some point, maybe my proficiency at each one rises.
Yeah, I would imagine. So it's just like anything else. It's like if you're in the one genre, but you got new songs, new material, you just take it one day at a time, one track at a time, whatever. You just approach it the same way, basically.
Yeah, and also when I practice, I like. Really about the only thing I practice anymore is something specific that I have to do, which it takes is ongoing, constant, and takes a lot of time. But if I do have time to practice anything else, usually it's soloing. That's about the only, I don't really do technical stuff anymore because I kind of figure I've sort of reached the point where I'm going to be able technically to do what I want or need to do. So when I practice soloing, I use tracks. You can find all kind of free tracks online, and then I bought some and so forth. And so I just have this playlist full of tracks, and Jamie Aebersold jazz tracks, and some rock tracks that I pulled off the internet, and some sort of fusion tracks I pulled off the internet, and I'll just flip around and go from one to the other. And so I might practice a chicken picking thing for 15 minutes and then practice, West Montgomery octaves for a while or so forth.
How long would you practice for on average?
Not long enough.
No, but I mean, it sounds like you're doing quite a bit. It sounds like you're not picking up
it's sporadic because I don't have a lot of times, especially this new music director job. I don't have as much time as I'd like. And then practice has always been hard for me to make myself sit down and do it. But, the soloing thing, if I can do that let's say 4 or 5 days a week for 30, 45 minutes, that's pretty good. Sometimes I do better, and a lot of the time I do worse. And then when I get in a situation where I'm actually soloing, I'm thinking, God, I wish I'd spent more time practicing.
Yeah, but 4 or 5 times a week for 30 minutes, even week in and week out, and it's I don't need to tell you it's small increments. This doesn't happen I don't need to tell you this is not an overnight thing. It's the consistency.
Well, that's right, and there's and so many things fall into that, like bending in tune, or if you're practicing rock, the vibrato is going to be different than if you're practicing country.
Sure.
The vibrato there. And also, different genres require different pitches, sort of. Like if you're doing country bending, it's just really got to be really in tune. If you're doing blues bending, it doesn't really necessarily want to be in tune. So
sure.
all those things are require specific, attention.
So let's talk about, you mentioned the music director. As the MD of the Opry, what is your primary duties?
It's advancing music for upcoming shows and determining which musicians are going to play and figuring out the best way to reproduce someone's, current record on the radio or whatever they're doing. We have limitations of our staff band. They're great musicians, but we don't have everything. We don't have 8 electric guitars to cover the 8 electric guitar parts on a record, or there'll be fiddle, mandolin, banjo, and dobro and steel, and at some point we got to go, okay, this isn't important, but this is. So It's making those kind of decisions. There's a lot more than that, but that's probably the biggest part of what I do. And then, I'm in charge of the music from the time it gets submitted till it goes out on air. So there's a lot involved. It's actually reproducing it and making sure that it's right. And, making sure that front of house and broadcast has what they need to put it out correctly. And, there's a lot. It's a lot of work.
What do you like most, and what's the biggest challenge?
Well, I guess what I like most is when we get it right. The biggest challenge is, for me personally, is when something isn't right, having to tell people how to do their job, or how to do their job better, or whatever. That doesn't come easy to me to correct people.
Yeah.
So I'm learning, though. I'm trying to.
Yeah, well, especially because you've known these. It's got to be harder even because you've known these people for a long ass time in a totally different capacity.
Well, that's right. And they're friends.
Right.
And, so maybe them being friends makes it easier in a way, but still, and I'm not saying that this happens a lot. It doesn't, because all these people are total professionals and they have a lot of pride in what they do and the talent to do it. But, nobody's perfect. Sure. Steve got on me about things and it's just what happens. It's just not easy for me. That's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But, I've been pretty good about not stressing out over all this so far.
That's good, man. Very good. I want to ask you about a couple of artists, and for each one of them, maybe if you could tell me a story about how you got the gig and maybe a cool or interesting story about playing with them. And the first is the great Jerry Reed.
Yeah. Jerry was a great guy. I was there for a year and a half, and I'd been playing. I was living in Texas when I got that job. I was going to school in Denton. I'll give you a little bit of the history here. I was going to school in Denton, and then I got a job playing with Ray Price. At the time, I wasn't a country player at all. I was in jazz school, and he had an orchestra, and he needed a guitar player who could read scores. So I got hired, and then almost immediately he let the whole orchestra go and hired a bunch of guys from Nashville and put his old Cherokee Cowboy band back together, which was, a 4/4, Western swing band or shuffle, country shuffle band. But he kept me. So I did both for a while, and then I quit school, and my best friend, who's still my best friend, Bob Patan, played piano in that band. And we got to know through touring with Ray, a lot of people in Nashville. And Bob got hired to play with Jerry Reed. So he moved to Nashville in June of 81. And one morning in August, it was August 16th, actually, 1981.
Wow. You remember the exact?
Oh, all right. Of course. Yeah. The phone rang and my phone was by the bed. So I reached over and answered it. He said, "Hey, Reed's having auditions for guitar players today. If you can get here, you'll get one."
Your buddy Bob is telling you that.
Yeah. Cause he's in the band playing piano. So I called the airport and got a ticket and put a pair of underwear in a Stratocaster case and flew to Nashville, and somebody picked me up at the airport and took me to Jerry's office. And they had been auditioning people all day. I was the next to last one. And so I got my audition, and Reed was his first one kind of with the band, and then he came in, and I played Sugarfoot Rag with him, and honestly, I can't remember what else. But we played through a few things. And he asked me to stick around, so I sat downstairs and listened to the last guy audition. And then after that was over, he called me back up and offered me the job. So I said, well, great. I'll go home and get all my stuff and come back down. And he said, oh no, Cock, we start tomorrow. He said, you start now. You're not going home. And so now I'm still playing with Ray at this point. So I had to call Ray and quit immediately. And I think this may have been a I guess we could go back and look at the calendar. It was kind of midweek, and we had a show on Friday. So, not the most ethical thing I've ever done, but so I quit Ray on Tuesday, which was not a happy time. But we had a show on Friday, and so there was all this stuff to learn of reeds. So I stayed up every night and practiced these triple harmony guitar parts until we played this show on Friday. And 9 days later, we did Austin City Limits.
Wow!
So, which is pretty unbelievable that I made it through it at all.
And how old were you at the time?
So 26, 27 maybe.
Wow, what a cool accomplishment at that age.
So I had to buy clothes. I had to go buy clothes almost every day. Like 2 days, I'd buy 2 days worth of clothes, and and so I did that. And after a month, he let me get away, and I went back home and loaded up a U-Haul, and I had in my car, pulled my car behind, and finally moved to Nashville. So that was 81.
That's awesome.
And that was starting with Reed.
That's a great story, man. How long were you with Jerry for?
I was with him for about a year and a half.
That's great. What did you learn from him, from watching him or being around him? What was one of the takeaways that you got?
Well, the thing that was greatest about him, when I was with him, he was a flat picker. He never once, the whole time I was with him, picked up a thumb pick, which is weird. He just wouldn't do it because he wanted to be George Benson at that point. But, honestly, the main thing I learned from him, and it's obvious when you really dig into his music, is when he was being soulful, he was at his best. Like he was flat picking, soloing, but, and he was trying to be a jazz player, and he would do these convoluted things that would work sometimes and not work other times. But when he just got down to playing sort of basic soul, blues, that part of his playing, he was fantastic. He was fantastic anyway.
What a tremendous guitarist, man.
Yeah, and really fun to be around. And
so his on-screen persona, which is exuded fun. I was going to ask you that. That's the thing. You always saw Jerry Reed. He was always smiling, laughing. That was his real. That wasn't like the smoke screen.
No.
Yeah.
No. That's. I think like a lot of actors, he was that guy.
Yeah.
Sort of full of himself to a point, but fun-loving.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool, man. So that was a hell of a good way to start off your welcome to Nashville.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, yeah. So I moved to Nashville. First of all, it paid well. And so I moved to Nashville making money, which almost nobody does.
Did it spoil you?
I don't know. No, not really. I mean, I bought a house.
Good for you.
So it allowed me to be comfortable.
That's great.
And also when you move to Nashville playing guitar for Jerry Reed, it's like instant credibility. So, so I didn't have to prove myself as much as some people, most people have to when they come to town.
Sure.
Which was great. May have been better for me in a way if I'd had to prove myself. I may have worked a little bit harder, but I didn't rest on my laurels too much.
I don't think you can when you're working with a guy like that and you're 26 years old.
Well, yeah, no, it was hard working with him. I mean, as far as not hard working with him, but you had to keep your chops up. It was demanding.
I would imagine. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah. Well, cool story, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Johnny Cash.
So this is 80. This would have been 88. And I'd been with Milsap until 87 and decided it was time to get off the road and start doing sessions. And it was starting to happen a bit. And I get this call from John's road manager who said, Johnny had just fired his whole band. And he was, he had the big band with the horns and two guitars and, that band. And so he was going to go down to just having guitar, bass, drums, and piano, 4-piece band, and offered me the job. And I said, well, I don't want to do it. Because I want to stay in town and do sessions. And he kind of kept at me. Finally, he said, well, just come up and meet John and just, do that. And then if you still don't want to do it, then that's fine. So I did. I went and went to his office, and just he and I sat in a room and talked, and we sort of played some guitar together, and I left with the job. I mean, he was just the coolest guy. It was like I couldn't say no because, I don't know.
It's Johnny Cash.
He's Johnny Cash, but he was so sincere and down to earth and fun in a different way than Reed, of course. A lot more serious, but he's just a cool guy. I thought, this will be good to do. It was the best decision I ever made, really, playing with him, because up to that point, and still everything to me was all about technical precision. Like the 80s were sort of my real formative years as far as really trying to hone my craft. Mm-hmm. And, the 80s, everything was about quantizing and perfection. And the LA guitar players were all great. It was Lukather and Dan Huff and all these guys that I looked up to. And so when I got the job with Cash, it wasn't really that much in time or that much in tune. But it was much more musical than most things I had done. And so I kind of learned from that job what I think we know more today than certainly we did then, is that music doesn't have to be perfect. That music, if you feel it, it's all about the feeling you get out of it, not the actual technical perfection. Because, the records that we loved in the 60s and 70s, you could go back and listen to those things now, and they're not perfect.
Yeah, but they feel great, man.
They feel great. That's right. So, and also the Cash gig was good for me because the guitar starts everything. And so, and there was no set list. So he would, he would turn around and say, whatever. And I would have to think of the song, think of the intro, think of the tempo, key, or all that, and then just start it, like then. And so it helped everything. It helped my sense of tempo, my sense of feel, all that.
Man, so you walk in Johnny Cash's office. What are you thinking? Like you're sitting in like across the desk from Johnny Cash. Was it weird or like?
Well,
like, was he intimidating? Not like being intimidating,
no,
but
no,
okay.
No. He was like really friendly and nice. He really was those things.
Yeah.
He was such a warm, interesting person. He wasn't intimidating at all.
That's great.
That was a big part of it. And he's another guy. He was exactly, he's a legend, but rightfully so. He was that guy. He was totally that guy.
Yeah.
He was somebody, he would invite me to parties, or if I needed to talk to somebody about something personally, I could talk to him.
That's great.
He was great. And then I got to work with him almost to the end, recording wise. I left I quit in 91 and did some work with him through 92, but he was that guy all the way to the end.
That's awesome, man. Did you do anything at the end, like when he was doing this stuff with Rick Rubin?
I did a little bit. The way they would do those things is the Cash cabin, which has changed now, but then it really was just a cabin, and it's in the woods across from where his house used to be. And they would assemble a few musicians with John in a really, really rustic setup. I think ADAT's probably at that time. And so he would have some lyrics written on a page, and he would sit at the table and with a microphone, and then we would record these things. No click. We would just record them, and then they would send those tapes to LA, and Rick Rubin would take them and he'd actually strip most things off and then just sort of rebuilt around John's voice. But some of what I did lasted. There's a few tracks that made it to those records. But the drag for me in a way is when I quit in '91 is right when he did those American recordings. So at that point, the guys went out and they were huge rock stars, and everything was like really, really cool. Yeah. And I missed all that, but it was the right thing for me to do.
Sure. And then Johnny Mathis. What an interesting.
I've got a buddy, John Jarvis, who's a great piano player. Said when I started playing with Mathis, he said, "I think you're the only guy that's ever played for Johnny Cash and Johnny Mathis."
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, what an interesting thing. I saw him on your resume. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah, his guitar player needed to take some time off, and so I was just a sub on that gig. So, but that was there's not much of a story about getting it, except that I got a tape of the show and I thought, I can't do this, because he's like Gill Rigers is his name. He's a really great finger style player with a lot of Latin, not Latin roots, but has really studied Latin music. And some of the stuff was just beyond my ability. And so I just said, guys, I don't think I can do this. But I guess ultimately I was too stupid to say no. So I went in and did it.
That's awesome. What was he like?
Oh man, I've been lucky with people. He is the greatest guy. He still sings great. He's a really, really nice guy. I love him to death. He's really, really cool. Really cool. It's a great show. It's an orchestra gig. There's always, I think, a 32-piece orchestra.
Wow.
And the core rhythm section is great.
Not for nothing,
it's
but
wonderful.
Do you know how much money you got to be bringing down to be supporting a 32? I mean,
he fills rooms too, and not small rooms. Yeah. He's still really popular.
Yeah. I saw him recently. There was a documentary on Netflix about Nat King Cole. You see that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I saw part of it. Sure did.
It was pretty cool because I didn't know much about Nat until I saw that. It was really interesting. And they interviewed Johnny quite a bit on there because, talking about the racism and some of the stuff they had to deal with. And it was just, he's a real classy guy. You could just, just total professional. You could just see that in the guy's character.
Yeah, he saw, and he was young when he started. So we do, or in his show is, I can't remember the title of it, but it's the song from Black Orpheus. And there was a way that they did it before I was there. And John also will change things up. So we were running something one day at soundcheck, and he said, no, let's do it like this. And kind of broke it down to where it was just guitar and bass. And he told me, he said, don't play so much. He said, play it really, really simply and sparsely. He was talking about the mood of the song, and he was, of course, totally right. And he said, yeah, Miles Davis took me to see that movie. I went, you saw that movie with Miles Davis? I went, yeah.
That's funny, man.
Those are the guys he was hanging with in, those days, late 50s.
That's pretty
anyway,
cool,
he's a cool guy. And that was a gig where when I decided I was going to do it, I sat every day and practiced, for, at least an hour or more on the songs that I was going to play to physically get my hands to where I could do it. And I was still shaky when I started, but I got better at it as I went along. But, I really put in hours and hours to actually be able to do that gig. It was beyond my ability.
I appreciate you saying that you were shaky doing it, because I think a lot of people listening to this think that people who have been super successful are for some reason immune to like the normal shit that everybody else is immune. Like, I think I get the success is like misunderstood, I think often. And, I think people think that, well, he just got that, or he's got this crazy talent that, you're just like everybody else. You just worked really hard to push through it,
Well, yeah. And, I don't know if I'm different than everybody else or some, I think for sure, but I'm never really totally comfortable. Now, I never do or rarely do the same thing enough times to get complacent with it or really comfortable with it. It's like everything it seems like I've done, I'll do a lot of it. Like with the opera, you'll play a song once and you won't see it again for 6 months or a year or never.
Sure. And
so there's a lot of that to where, you can't get complacent. But even that gig, I'm nervous. I mean, there's an edge going on all the time. I don't know if that's true for everybody. I think to a certain point it's healthy because if you sound complacent, then you sound boring, right? I mean, there's you got to be trying to. It sounds like you're trying, or it sounds like you're not trying. I don't think people are fooled by those kind of things, but I'm scared a lot of the time. I'm scared a whole lot of the time.
Well, in Nashville too, the talent pool is very rich, man, and it's deep, and everybody there has such a good work ethic. They really have pride of ownership in what they're doing and producing.
That's right.
So you've really got to be on top of your game, because if you're not, you're going to get smoked by everybody around you pretty much.
Well, and also you've got to know how to get along with people, because there's always somebody else that people like and would want to work with. So you can't be an asshole in this town. You've got to be able to get along. It's a big, big part of it.
Yeah. And that being said, it's in my observation that when you are easy to get along with, everybody really supports and pushes you and tries to get you new opportunities. It's really, it's an unusual community, man. It really is. There's no like threat of at least, look, I'm sure there is for some people, but overall it seems people are more supportive than protective.
Yeah. And, back to the Reed thing, when I was in school, I never had any intention at all of moving to Nashville. I thought I was going to move to LA or New York. And so I just ended up here, and, it was just luck. And as it turns out, I think it was exactly the right place for me to be in so many ways. So I'm glad I ended up here. New York, from what I gather, there's not much there.
Not anymore.
In LA, not anymore. Right. And then LA, is different too. There's not as much there, and there are a lot of people, and I think, and this is a great town to live in.
Oh God, yeah.
So I just luckily, as most of my life, I just lucked into living in a really fantastic music community.
Yeah, that it is, man. Are you working on anything now that you're excited about? Outside of, I'm sure, the new music director position has got you pretty pumped up.
Well, that's pretty much it right now. I had this, we had a Noki Edwards tribute last night at the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society convention, whatever it's called. And, that was a lot of work getting that together. So, I was, excited about that, and it's done. It was great. We had great players. Bonamassa showed up, Tommy Emmanuel, bunch of guys, and Steve Gibson played, Bucky Barrett, Richard Smith. Anyway, Johnny Hyland played. It was great. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's some great players there, man.
Yeah. So once again, it was a show of, Noki was with the Ventures, for people who don't know, and he passed away in March. He was a really good friend of mine, and I played with him a lot. And he was a guy who enjoyed everything. He enjoyed country, rock, the Ventures, jazz. He was really a versatile guy. So this show was once again a kind of a melting pot of a lot of different things. So it was a challenge, and it was exciting to get that done. And I had a Glenn Campbell show as a theatrical presentation, but it was really cool with his kids a couple of weeks ago. That was exciting. So, my life is just sort of little pieces of things coming up. I've got I'm doing the Elvis on screen thing at Graceland in August during Elvis week there, and that's learning Burton's music.
Wow.
So I'll be working on that, because physically a lot of that stuff is tough, and I got to work back up to that. So I guess you could say I'm, excited about that because it's another challenge. But right now, the Opry job is pretty all consuming.
So that the Noki Edwards thing, was that your idea, or someone came up with that and then said, "Hey, let's try this," and then you sort of spearhead it? How do those things start? Well,
Noki's wife Judy is trying to keep things going for Noki, his legacy going, and then just as part of being his wife, she had a memorial in Yuma where they lived, and then she had one in L.A. And then one, I think, in Seattle. And Noki was a big part of the Chet Atkins, society. And I think I knew that she would like to have had one. So I just, contacted them and put it together.
That's pretty
for her as much as any, and for everybody.
That's got to be pretty. Like when you're standing there in the audience, or when you're playing, actually, and the things at the end of the night, it's got to be a pretty good sense of accomplishment that you basically, it's like making a painting or creating a song. You develop this whole thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Except I was emceeing the thing, and I realized what a shitty MC I am, and we ran 30 minutes. It was supposed to be an hour and 15 minute set, and it was an hour and 45, and trying to move things along, and then trying to play, and I didn't play perfectly, of course, and so that bugs me. But it was a huge success. It really was, and so I was really proud when it was done. I was glad I did it, but it was a lot of work, and it was exciting.
Yeah. What's the next one that's percolating in the back of your head, if you could say?
I don't have one. I got this this Elvis thing coming up, and that's really the only special thing I've got going right now. So, I mean, up and coming. So, something will come along. Well, I've got CMA and CMA Christmas are going to be, I do those shows. And so, that'll start in August. It's not that far away, is it?
No.
So that's coming up. Those are CMA Christmas is always pre-recorded, and once again, that's a lot of material, and we'll record that in August and then film the show in September, and then CMA is in November, and Steve Gibson and I do the incidental music, and there'll be some work to do there. So that's coming up.
Well, sounds like you got your hands full.
You're reminding me. See,
now you're gonna get off this call and make a to-do list or something.
I'm overwhelmed again.
Sorry,
I thought it was getting easy. What happened?
Well, it's Friday, man. You can kick back till Monday at least,
Right. Oh no, I work on the weekends. Remember, it's the Opry.
Oh, hey, what would you say if this is possible for you to answer this? Even like your top 3 musical experiences have been either because like the quality of the work you personally did, or the hang with the musicians, or the vibe, or whatever, just the things the top 3 things that knee-jerk reaction that come out at you.
Oh, wow. Well, we've talked about 2. Like I say, playing with Johnny Cash sort of opened my mind to what really matters in music. And then sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum, playing with Johnny Mathis was such a rich musical experience. And there's a part of that show, I didn't mention this before, and it's part of what I had to practice. There's part of the show where it's just he and I. There's probably about maybe 15 minutes. It's just guitar and vocal.
Wow.
And if you can imagine it, sitting on a stool next to Johnny Mathis and playing with him singing, there's nothing like it in the world. Even scared to death that you're going to miss something.
Sure.
It's really rewarding. And then there's another thing that happened that was cool, and it was the last thing I did with John Johnny Cash as a guitar player in his band. Is he took me to New York in '92 when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so I played that induction ceremony that year.
Where was that?
It was in the Waldorf.
Okay.
I guess it's like a room in the basement or something. I can't really, maybe it wasn't basement, but somewhere, not a huge room, but with a stage. And it was Paul Schaefer and those guys. And then I played with John. And then after we did our set, they had a big jam where everybody got up. And so I played with all these guys. It was Keith Richards. I stood next to Keith and sort of hung out with him on stage, and Santana and The Edge and Robbie Robertson and oh shoot, there's a whole list of guys I can't remember. Played with all these guitar players. It was really cool. And then at some point, a guy came up and said, "Hey man, Jimmy Page wants to sit in, and we're out of amps. Do you mind if he uses your amp?" And I went, "No, I think that'd be okay."
Oh wow!
So I did that. That was cool. You know, I've had so many great experiences. It's really hard to say. But,
yeah, that's a pretty cool one, man. Are you angry at Jimmy Page?
No, because I got to hear him play. I'm angry at him just because he's so great. Yeah, it is that. Always have been.
Hey, you went to school in South Carolina. Is that where you're from?
Yes.
Whereabouts?
Aiken, South Carolina. That's near Augusta, Georgia, right across the line.
Gotcha. What was your childhood like growing up?
I guess it was fairly normal. I was an only child of a single parent, so maybe it wasn't that normal. But you know, it's a small town, and you know, I had friends, and saw that my aunt, who was the most uncool person I've ever known, was the one who called and told me to watch the Beatles on Ed Sullivan when I was a kid, which kind of got all this started.
Yeah.
But and then, you know, once I got to be about 14, I started playing in bands and got headed in that direction.
That's cool. Sounds like your mom was supportive of that, or like she had no choice?
Well, yeah, no, she was supportive. She you know, she paid for guitar lessons when she saw I was interested in that. You know, I think she was just glad I was interested in something, especially later. So when I was my late teens, you know, I was not a model. And so I think she saw music as at least something that was legal.
Yeah. And who is when they're in their late teens, you know?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't.
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah. Are there one or two things that you've done during your career that sort of, at the time, you were maybe skeptical of doing them, but hindsight being 2020, they were big breakthroughs for you?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things that are pretty big. One, I was on the road when I was, I guess I was 21 or 2. You know, I went to the University of South Carolina and wasn't really interested. The music school wasn't really geared toward what I wanted to do. So I dropped out and well, let me back up. I'll tell you a story that kind of gets us there. After I left University of South Carolina, I played in a local band for a while, and then got hired by a friend of mine who was quitting his band to go on a band that was sort of like a regional touring band, you know, playing hotel lounges. And I did that for maybe 6 or 8 months, and then that band broke up, and I went back home. We were in Florida when it ended, and I went back home, and I'm at my mom's house, and there's nothing going on, you know, sort of back and aching with no future. And the trumpet player in the band was on his way to New York. He got a gig in New York, so he stopped by my house, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Man, I don't know. I guess I'll find another band." He said, "Why don't you go to New York with me?" And he said, "We'll find you something. It's New York City." And I said, "I can't go to New York. I don't have any money." And my mom pulled out a jar of dimes. I mean, a huge jar. She had been saving dimes for years. And she said, "Here, take this and go." because she knew that, that if I stayed there wasn't any future. So I actually got in the car with this guy and went to New York City with a bucket of dimes.
When you had to pay the toll, it was always in dimes, man, right?
Oh man, I lived off dimes. It was like $250 in dimes or something like that, which is not much money, but this is like 1974, I guess.
That's about $500-600 today.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to New York and immediately got a gig and went on the road with still hotel bands, but these were like show bands. It was a step up and making good money. And there was a trumpet player in the last one of these bands named Warren Burkhart, and he had gone to North Texas. He was Lyle May's roommate in North Texas. Mm-hmm. And he kept saying, man, you need to go to North Texas. That's the next step for you. So I started saving money and then quit. And I got accepted and moved to Denton, Texas, and went to school.
That's wild.
That's the biggest thing that I ever did that put me where I am today. Because I knew something before that, but after going to school, I knew a lot more about theory, and I knew a lot more just about playing and being independent, all those things.
Where'd you live in New York?
I was in Scarsdale.
That's a really good area.
Oh yeah, but I lived in the attic of a restaurant that also had a nightclub.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, we don't have time for these stories, but the manager, this guy's wife owned this restaurant, and he was from Italy, and his name was Val Pascal, and there was a bar in the restaurant, and he would put these show bands together and work them up in the bar in the restaurant. And then once they were ready to go, he'd put them out on the road. He had like 5 or 6 going. So I was in one of these bands. So I lived in Scarsdale, but I lived in the attic, and the attic was divided between the Puerto Ricans that worked in the restaurant, in the kitchen, and the band. They had half of it, and we had half of it. And it's every bit as nice as you might imagine. It was a dump. It was a total dump. Yeah. So I lived in, as soon as I walked out the front door, there was the deli, everything was posh.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Ritzy area. That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's quite funny, man. That's a good story, man. That's a really good story.
Thanks.
What a cool movie your mom, though, with here, take these dimes, which I'm sure she did half for you and half for her,
Well, she just knew that if I stayed there, I would end up with some dead end job, probably in trouble. It just there wasn't anything there. Some places are great to be from, but they're not great to stay in. There aren't that many places that you can live and make a living as a musician. And, I didn't really consciously make the decision to become one. It just seemed like it was the only thing I ever did well or well enough or could do.
Yeah, but you must have liked it.
Oh yeah, I loved it. Yeah, for sure.
If you've been at this, your music career has been really long because you're really experienced.
yeah, and old. Thank you.
If you had to go back and give advice to younger Kerry, assuming you would have listened, what would you have told yourself that you think would have benefited you?
Probably the same things I tell myself today. Practice more, practice smart, gain self-confidence. Self-confidence is really important in playing. Sometimes I have to sort of steel myself up. If I'm unsure about what I'm doing, I have to sort of at least exude it if I don't feel it. But, it's taken me a long time to, I guess I've always tried to do those things, but, practice is important. Playing is important. Play as much as you can. I never was really good at going out and sitting in clubs. I think that's a great tool for developing your playing and playing with people. So maybe I would tell myself to do more. but I was lucky enough to be comfortable to not have to do it. A lot of guys have to go do those things to generate work. And I somehow was lucky enough and then too lackadaisical to go do it. But it's just all about playing more and being confident without being arrogant.
Yeah, I think that's important. I've been so lucky. I really have. And I think it's reflective. It's not me. It's got to be reflective of, for the most part, the musicians today. I have really not had very much arrogance at all. Certainly nothing out of Nashville. But I have found most musicians to be quite the opposite. Incredibly humble, no matter what level they're at. I mean, I've interviewed some, like you. I've interviewed a lot of real successful people, and everybody's really mellow.
Man, I'm getting to know, and I hope I do more and better, but I'm just getting to know Joe Bonamassa, who's like the nicest guy in the world. He really is. He's generous of his time and his talent and communal with his playing. And I mean, this is a guy that's, he's a incredible musician on the top of his game. And he's the nicest guy in the world. And now a member of our community here. He lives here. So.
Oh, he lives in Nashville now.
Oh yeah. He lives here.
Oh,
so, I mean, he's the perfect example of exactly what you're saying. He has a right to be arrogant, and he's not.
Yeah, well, that right to be, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I'm kidding, but what
I do. I know what you're saying, but anytime, what does it say? You want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's the expression, or something like that.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
If you're today, let's talk gear for a few minutes. What's your go-to guitar right now? And maybe what other two guitars might round out your top three? Which has got to be tough. You've got to have a ton of guitars, no?
Yeah. I since I flip around so much, I don't really have one. But I tell you, I have 4 guitars that I carry, and have. Well, 3 that I've carried for a long time, and now there's a 4th that's added. I have 2 or 3 of each. I have Tom Anderson Strats and Tellys, and there's always one of each. A Strat and a Telly, one of each of those that goes with me everywhere, and a Paul Reed Smith, a custom 24, I think is the model, but a humbucking Paul Reed Smith with a whammy bar. So and my Strats have whammy bars. So, the Telly is for stop tailpiece stuff, and the Strat is for, it's a Strat, and the PRS is for anything that goes from the, Les Paul to, the whole whammy bar rock thing. And so also I've been carrying, I was a 335 guy for years. That's all I owned for many years. So I have a Collings 330. Yeah, look at there. That's mine. Except I didn't have is that a Bigsby? I can't see.
It is a Bigsby, yeah.
Yeah, I see now.
Yeah, it's a Bigsby.
What year is that?
Man, believe it or not, this is a 2014.
Wow,
and it's real
beautiful.
Interesting. It looks like a vintage, but it's not. What happened was, do you know John Prestia?
Yeah, I know John.
Okay, so I was in Nashville like almost a year ago, and John said, "Hey, man, come over to my studio. I got all these vintage guitars and amps." And I'm like, "Great!" Twist my arm. What a great way to spend an afternoon with a cool guy. And so I was looking for a 335, and there was one on Craigslist in Nashville, and we called it, and it had an aftermarket Bigsby. And I was thinking, man, I thought it was some idiot like me bought the guitar and sitting in his driveway I imagine me with a drill, a Makita drill, and I'm like, man, I'm not getting that thing. Well, we talked to him, and John talked to him. He turned out the Bigsby was put in at Gibson. The guy works at Gibson.
Oh yeah.
So that was
makes sense.
Totally safe. I mean, those guys installed it. So we came over, we checked it out, and I'm not a big guy. My hands are average size. The neck is perfect. And so it's not a vintage, but they put that sticker over to cover the tailpiece.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's like the The customs, the ones they did that with in the 60s, had
correct
custom on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that says, same. It says custom made, same thing. It's just the same sticker, but so it looks like a vintage with the dots, but it feels great, man. It's got classic 57s. I love this guitar, man.
That's great. Yeah. When you find one that you love, that's the thing. And I grew up with I have a 67 335 that my mom bought used in 69 or something. And, but it wasn't the pickups sound great, but the neck never was a great neck for me. It was a little too skinny, a little too fat. And I just trashed it by trying to make it great. And I kept it. I still got it. But anyway, I kind of got away from 335 because I wasn't digging that one. And then I got this Collings I-35, which is their version.
Yeah.
And it tunes great and it sounds great. And so now that's my fourth. So I kind of carry four.
I can't tell you how many players I've interviewed that love that I-335 from Collins.
Yeah.
Loads of guys. I mean, loads of people. Do you know a young kid named Eddie Robinson?
Yeah, I know Eddie.
Eddie's a
great player.
A very nice young kid, and he has two of them, and he loves them. A number of guys that play those guitars, man, in town.
He's making too much money if he's got two of them.
Man, that guy's like 6'7". I ran into him at NAMM. I'm like, holy shit, man!
He's tall.
I couldn't. I was like, holy smoke! What a nice young kid, though, man.
Yeah.
And that's a great guitar. Hey, what do you I had an Anderson for a little while. I love it's got those steel frets.
Yeah.
Or aren't they steel, the frets?
I don't know.
I think that, they play so smoothly. They're not like normal frets. It's like cheating.
Maybe that's part of what I love about them.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know.
I love that. The pickups weren't for me, and but everything else I loved about the guitar.
Yeah, I love mine, and my Strats are sort of they don't look identical, but the necks are and pickup configuration, so they're sort of interchangeable or whatever. I can play either one. My Tellys are different. One's a maple fretboard, one's rosewood, but I love them both. And one of them is with me everywhere. Like a pair live at the Opry, and a pair are here for sessions. So
sure, I know you're saying about the neck. Don't you hate that if you love everything about a guitar, but the neck is just because that's that's like the number one thing you got to have.
Hey, I've decided life's too short to play shitty guitars.
Absolutely,
if I'm going to play, I'm going to play a guitar that I love to play.
Absolutely, especially that's a tool for your business, man. You got to have.
I got enough handicaps without picking one up.
I don't know about that, but I hear you what you're saying. Anybody who's influenced your playing that people would be surprised to hear?
I don't know. Probably not. I can tell you some of them. Probably first was Wes Montgomery. Then it's actually B.B. King early on, although I kind of got away from B.B.'s thing. But there was a point when I was a teenager, I was way into him. But Larry Carlton probably is the biggest on me. Like starting with the Tom Scott and L.A. Express, and then I got into the Crusaders records and then his records. I really, really have always, since the early 70s, loved his stuff. So he's probably all in all the biggest influence. And then Pat Metheny, I love, although I can't play like him.
That's what everybody that loves him always finishes with. I love Pat Metheny, man. I wish I could play like him.
Oh yeah.
Who could play like him?
Have you seen him?
I have not.
It's a religious experience. I mean, he's so great live. I mean, his records are great too. I love his records, but to see him live is just, it's really something. I've seen him a few times.
I've had an experience like that one time. I saw Derek Trucks close out the
that's another one.
Oh man. And I was sitting third or fourth row. I went with my son. It was a blues festival down here, and he closed out their set with an old Bob Dylan song called Down in the Flood. And I'm speechless after I saw what he did. And just that one song he did, I told my son, I said, you're never going to see anything like that again, man. It was pretty intense. Yeah. But I've had that experience once, that religious experience kind of thing.
But I grew up in the South in the late 60s, early 70s. So I saw the Allman Brothers 3 times, twice with Dwayne, which was,
you're kidding,
which was oh yeah.
Like where?
And they were huge for me when I was a kid. I was way into the Allman Brothers. I saw them in Columbia, South Carolina, and maybe both times in Columbia, in two different places. One was in Memorial Auditorium, which is just like probably 3,000 seater, something like that, 2,000 or 3,000 seater. And then I saw him someplace. It was kind of like it was a weird venue. I can't remember where, but it seemed like it was a concrete basement, huge, like ballroom type thing. And I saw Edgar Winter's White Trash open for the Allman Brothers. The big band with Jerry LaCroix and that. I saw that band open for the Allman Brothers.
And you probably paid like $4 for the whole gig,
oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, probably.
That's crazy, man. Holy shit. Wow.
So anyway, I mean, Derek kind of took what Dwayne did and times 1,000.
Yeah. But nobody could do that ever again unless you start playing when you're 5.
Yeah.
That's miles.
That's right.
That's just neck time. That's a lifetime of neck time.
Yeah, that's right.
That's just, what a cool show, man, to see the brothers. I saw them of course, much later in the Beacon Theater, 2011, one of the best shows I've ever seen.
I've got a buddy that was at one of those shows. Yeah.
Really cool. Again, I was with my son and we're into the same kind of music. So was that
Warren Haynes?
Yes.
Was he there then?
Yeah, that was Warren Haynes and just breathtaking to see them play for 3 hours is just phenomenal. Really, really special memory for me musically.
Yeah.
Your first guitar. What was your first guitar that your mom bought you?
It was a Silvertone acoustic, and it was $35. I remember with the case.
Do you still have it?
And no, I don't. I loaned it to a guy who wanted to learn to play, and I loaned it to him, and then I was somehow embarrassed to ask for it back. And he's since passed away, and I'm sure it's long gone. It wasn't a very good guitar. It sure. Obviously would have meant something, but no, I don't have it. It was a cheap Silvertone acoustic. Gone.
Do you remember the first record you ever bought?
No, I don't know that I bought.
Or that was bought for you?
Well, I can remember when I was a little kid hearing, and I don't know if my mom had bought these or somehow they just ended up in my house, but I can remember the early Elvis stuff, Mystery Train and all that. So I imagine my mom must have bought that, although I can't see her listening to it. But, or what it might be was sometimes since my mom worked, I had babysitters, and I bet they had these records.
Oh, okay.
But I think the first thing I ever really loved was Battle of New Orleans, the Johnny Horton thing. Are you too young to remember that?
Yeah, I'm a little too. I'm 54.
Yeah. Look it up. Battle of New Orleans.
I'm writing it down right now.
It's words written to a bluegrass tune, the 8th of January. I don't know which came first. I assume the 8th of January came first.
I will look that up.
That's got to be early 60s. And then, probably the first things I bought were like, Are You Experienced and Disraeli Gears and sort those things, the first Led Zeppelin record and Steppenwolf, probably all that stuff. That's kind of where I was at in those days.
Man, I was just listening to Disraeli Gears 2 days ago. Some records, man, they're just timeless,
Yeah, that's right. And speaking of, some not perfect, they're not perfect records.
Like you said, man, I'm not listening. I don't care if they mess up a note. I want to feel something. That's why I listen to music.
Right. And the hum, the amp hum and all that stuff. Like I never knew, never even noticed that stuff.
No.
Now it's just, yeah. Well, anyway, different world,
different times. Yeah, man. How about Desert Island Discs, Kerry? Top 3 in no particular order at all, and just for today, not like permanently, knowing you could change it tomorrow.
Let's see. Probably Sgt. Pepper's. Maybe Wes Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the Bumpin' album. And Dvorak, New World Symphony.
That's interesting.
Well, Desert Isle, that's pretty tough.
It is tough, man. It is tough. Hey, you have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
Not especially. I mean, I enjoy doing other things. I enjoy traveling. I enjoy puttering around my house.
You probably don't have a chance to putter much. So like when you do, it's more like therapeutic, relaxing. It's more like you're not working and there's no responsibility. I mean, I'm assuming, because I'm kind of like that. I don't get to putter very much.
Yeah. Especially lately, I haven't had much time. I like to read, but I don't have that much time to do it. I've always kind of had a little bit of I've had a couple of interests. Like I sort of enjoy computers, but not working on them. I just kind of enjoy sort of the nuts and bolts of them somewhat. But I can't call that a hobby. But I'm pretty good with an iPhone or with a Mac. If somebody's got a question, a lot of times I'll have the answer.
You're the guy.
Sometimes I'm the guy. And then, I think if I did something other than what I do now, I'd probably build houses.
Really?
I kind of like the whole construction thing. I built 2. I mean, contracted 2 myself.
Sure.
So, I kind of enjoy that process, picking things and designing things, and
man, you'd be
seeing them go together.
Be a good real estate investor.
I don't know about that. The market would tank if I got in it.
You're the cooler.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
That's what they call that, right? The cooler.
I think so.
That's the guy who, the table's really hot in Vegas and he comes by and everybody is wiped out.
When I've spent a lot of time in Vegas in my life and I never gambled.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
I've learned.
Yeah, I hear you. I play blackjack once in a while. I'm not a big gambler at all. Hey, this is a tough one. Talk about a specific experience that changed your life or altered the way you think about things.
Well, this is sort of a different subject, but I actually saved somebody's life one time.
Wow.
And which is a part of what I'm saying is I sort of have my wife and I both, we sort of have an ongoing appreciation of what we have, so things change my life all the time when I see people that have less, either physically or emotionally or, financially or whatever. And so I think my life sort of changes, all the time, just keeping a realistic attitude of what I have, my health and comfortability and those sort of things.
Sort of like a gratitude checklist.
Yeah.
Without being
like
formal.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And like it was a friend of mine and it was in another country and had a heart attack and was gone. And, I didn't really know what I was doing, but performed CPR on him. And they came back and ended up, they're gone now, but they lived for another 5 years. And I wouldn't recommend it as an experience for anybody, but I would think it kind of changed it changed my life, if that makes sense.
In what way? Just that made you focus more on the stuff you have?
Yeah. And the frailty of our existence, and the difference between being fine and not being fine. I don't know. That sounds that might not make much sense, but
no, it makes perfect sense, man. No, it makes total sense, to be honest with you.
And so I try to have an ongoing sense of, maybe for our conversation, what that means is that if I play a shitty solo, it really doesn't matter. I mean, even if I start a song in the wrong key for an artist and it's embarrassing for them and me for a minute, which I don't do, often. I haven't done that many times in my life, but even if I do that and I'm beating myself up for it, I still, I can still walk out of the room or whatever.
Man, I bet your own personal stress level is significantly lower because of that as well. Yeah, I guess I try to keep that in mind sometimes. I'm not quite sure how much it helps when I'm freaking out about playing something, but I do try to keep it in mind. I do try to keep that perspective. Yeah, that's pretty intense, man.
It is intense. I don't recommend it. It's not fun, but it is rewarding, and enriching. I can't remember exactly what your question was.
It was talk about a specific experience that changed your life or altered the way you think about things and saving someone's life. Yeah, I could totally see that. Wow.
Yeah. Just I was in the right place at the right time.
And you did something.
It's amazing. Yeah, not knowing what I was doing. To be honest, well, I won't get into it, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing something. I was just trying to do something because I couldn't just sit there. And it worked.
Man,
so
I think
it's pretty cool.
I think that's great because, doing something is usually the path to getting somewhere, even if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Very, very few times is your effort lost. Even if something fails, you just don't get to connect the dots moving forward. You always get to connect it later on and say, oh, remember that experience I had? Now I could apply it to this maybe 10 years later or something like that.
Well, there are all kind of cliches about how, Edison made 10,000 light bulbs before he got one that worked. Failure is a large part of success. Nobody gets it right every time, all the time. And so, right in what we do, there are varying degrees of right. You can get it pretty right. Like most of what I do, I feel like I get pretty right, rarely perfect, and hopefully rarely really not right. I don't know, but yeah, all that.
Most important lesson your business has taught you?
It's relationships are really important. Your business relationships have a personal component to them, and I think it's a very, very important thing. And I think it helps your personal relationships.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hey, I'm going to ask you just two more questions, man. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, sure.
What are you looking forward to in the future, both musically and personally?
Well, with this music director job, I'm trying to fine tune things, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of that come together, which I think is going to happen and is already happening. Musically, my whole life has just been sort of taking what comes next and sort of not saying no. and just seeing where that leads. And so I don't really have anything on the horizon that I'm looking to. Personally, if I can find the time, I'd love to do some vacation travel. Now that I'm not going to be traveling as much professionally.
Sure.
Maybe my wife and I getting to go some places and do some stuff. And honestly, right now, this job is pretty all consuming. So I look forward to having maybe some time off, just sitting here sometime.
I hear you, man. I totally hear you. Where do you think you're going to go travel next? Any place exciting?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of places, but I haven't seen all of Europe. I'd like to see more of continental Europe that I haven't seen. So that's probably first on the list. I don't know. Maybe I'll leave it up to my wife. See where she wants to go. We went to Ireland last year. She was working in England and Scotland, England, and Ireland. We stayed in Ireland for an extra 3 days, and that was great. That was really, really great. So who knows? We may go back there. Everybody I know who's been there absolutely loves it. Yeah. Oh man, it's beautiful. Have you gone? I have not. I've been to England a couple of times. My wife is from there. But now, really? Yeah, she's from there. And it's weird though, but she's from a little industrial town. So like when you go, I don't usually go with her because it's a little industrial town. There's not much to see there. But when I have gone, we've traveled around and it's really pretty, Where's she from? She's from a town called Dunstable, which is about 30 miles northwest, I believe, of London. They had a car factory there. That was a big employer when her mom worked at the car factory years ago. And, so it's not much really there. Yeah. It's the industrial parts of England that I love the most though. Like I love Manchester. It's a really great city, and Liverpool's a great city. And I don't know England that well, but, I like London just fine. It's just, I seem to like the people in the industrial parts of England a lot. Yeah. I met a bunch of guys in Ireland now. So I was telling her maybe next time she goes visits her mom. Yeah. Yeah. I'll go with her for a day. There. Yeah. And then we'll go there. Yeah. We'll go right over to Ireland because I know all these cats there that I've met. So that'll be interesting. One last question. Over the last 10 years, how do you think your personality's changed the most? And has that change been intentional and deliberate or more just a byproduct of the aging process? I think I'm more comfortable with myself is probably the biggest thing. And I think that's the wisdom of age as much as anything. Self-confidence is something that I've always, I've had to strive for, and I've gotten better at it, and just being comfortable with myself and in relating to other people and so forth. And that's probably it. And I don't think any one thing made that happen. I think it's just, trying and over time becoming more and more comfortable. And then, you said 10 years, but in the last 2.5 months, now that I'm actually sort of in charge of a lot of people and have to be aware and cognizant of their needs and their personalities, I think that's helped me grow. Like, we should probably talk in another 10 years, and I'll let you know what this has done for me. But you are more than welcome to come back on anytime, man. Okay, well, let's see. 10 years from today, this is Friday the 13th. Yeah, we'll pick a Friday the 13th, in 2028. Wow, that's scary. It is scary. Well, man, thanks a lot. I really appreciate this. You basically become more comfortable in your skin and more self-confidence. Yeah, I think aging sort of does that, doesn't it? Well, don't you think it either does it or doesn't do it? I mean, I know people that well, okay, let's talk about this just for a second. You know, as we get older as musicians, especially commercial musicians, you know, our viability goes down. I mean, I realize as a 64-year-old guitar player, I'm much less desirable than a 26-year-old guitar player or 34-year-old guitar player, or whatever you want to say. And, you know, when I was 26 and 34, I was counting on that. You know, I was counting on, okay, the old farts are going to get out of the way and make room for me. So I've always tried to keep that in mind and don't want to be the guy who gets old and bitter because things aren't the way they used to be. And so that's a part of it too. I think we either get more comfortable, or as we get older, if like I don't work the same way as I used to, and I miss it, but I get it. And some guys miss it and they don't get it. And then as they get older, they become less comfortable with who they are. Yeah. And what they become. And, you know, it's maybe not fair if you're a classical or a jazz musician. The older you are, the more desirable you are. But that's just it's the world we're in. And so yeah, I think we either get more comfortable with who we are or less. And hopefully I'm in the more category.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough for your time, Kerry. And let me tell people, Kerry is not for hire, but except for one thing. And I had to beat him over the head to get him to tell me this. He does tracks at home. Like if you need guitar tracks, or you probably produce stuff too, no?
Yeah. I've got a couple of things this weekend where somebody's just sent me a demo and a key and an idea of a tempo, and I'll build the whole thing.
That's great. And if you want to get a hold of Kerry to do that, go to his website. It's Kerry Marx, KerryMarx.com. And you can hook up with him there. Otherwise, go to the Opry, the Grand Ole Opry, and support them there. And if you go to one of their shows, say hi to Kerry and tell him you like the show. And that's about it, man. Any final words of wisdom?
Dude, I'm not wise. No.
That's two of us.
Yeah, I have one final word of wisdom. If you're in a place like Nashville, the key to success: don't go away. Just persevere.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Stick around, and just keep trying. And because if you don't, then you're not going to make it. You're obviously not going to make it if you go away. So. That's the one thing I've always done is I just never went away. I just kept going, and something always came up.
There you go. Good. That is wise. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again to Kerry Marx very much for spending time with us, and good luck and continued success with your new position as music director of the Grand Ole Opry.
Thank you, Craig. You were great, man. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And likewise. All right, everybody, make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com, sign up to get on our newsletter list. And remember, most importantly, happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, and I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.